Hi, and welcome to the Health Coach Tip Tuesday show, where every week we are going to give you the tips, tools, and resources you need to confidently solve your clients' health issues and grow your career as a health coach or professional. If you are ready to get started, drop the word facts into the comments, and we are going to send you two awesome things this week. We are going to send you the HPA Sex Hormone Access Guide and the HPA Sex Hormone Access video. So drop the word facts. If you guys have questions during the show, make sure to drop them below, and we will definitely answer those as we go along. I am your co-host and FDN course counselor, Piper Gibson. And many of you know the man next to me. This is Reed Davis, founder of Functional Diagnostic Nutrition. How are you today, Reed?
Doing fantastic. Thank you, Piper.
Awesome.
Thanks for having me on.
Yes. Thanks for coming on and teaching us all of your wisdom and valuable information. So this week, we will go ahead and get the show on the road. This week, we are going to talk about facts and myths of adrenal fatigue. So tell us a little bit about adrenal fatigue and why this term is outdated.
Well, it's too bad that it's outdated because it was a great construct, or heuristic. It's a way of looking at things that actually worked really well. It just turned out to be not so true. And, the idea is that the adrenals are the stress glands because they produce cortisol, which is your basic stress hormone. They also make adrenaline and some other hormones. So when you are under stress, your adrenals do have to produce. And so in the old days, when people were tired and fatigued and had vague symptoms, foggy thinking and these energy type stuff, they usually also showed up by the way of some sex hormone imbalances and some other just dysfunction, and it's very kind of vague. A lot of physicians would run a blood test, say nothing's wrong with you. And we've talked about that before on these Tip Tuesdays. Doctors really don't run the saliva testing, things that we should do. And we'd see real low cortisol. Go, oh, your adrenals are tired. And what that helped, the reason I said it was a great construct, because then we could, the person, well, why are my adrenals so tired? Well, you're just all kinds of stress. And it led to sorting out stress. Like, is it mental, emotional? Is it physical and trauma and aches and pains and injuries and weaknesses and things like that in the physical body? Or is it, chemical stressors? Is it some environmental stressor or something your body's making or producing or hosting, like parasites, bacteria, bugs, So it was a great construct. We'd run a saliva test and say, oh, your cortisol is real low and your adrenals must be tired. And again, I thought it was a good construct because it got people motivated to change. In other words, they go to their physician, nothing seems wrong in your blood work. You go to what back then it was just sort of the alternative practitioner, run a saliva test on the adrenal hormones and see that your cortisol was low. And sometimes your DHEA, which is the counterbalance, it was also low and really low. So we just said it was adrenal fatigue, and it was never written in stone, and it was never a medical diagnosis. It was just, here's a dysfunction that we could do something about. And so again, we found it very useful to motivate the client to let's investigate your stressors and let's start eliminating those stressors and let the body heal, let whatever's really going on grow out of it, so to speak, from good behavior versus what they were doing previously. And by the way, those stressors could include diet, not sleeping well, lack of exercise and detoxification of the body, and just all around stressors. Like I mentioned, it could be anything from food sensitivities to personal care products, household cleaning products and other things in the environment and inside you, not to mention if again, the bugs, the parasites, bacteria, funguses, biofilms, overgrowth, and all these things. And so it was a great idea. It just wasn't quite so. So as more people smarter than me started to look at this stuff and figure out the science, the first guy to approach me with it, hey, there's this idea of adrenal fatigue. It's a great construct, but here's what's really going on, was Brian Walsh. So if you look up Dr. Brian Walsh, he teaches at a university back east. But even then, doctors I originally worked with 20 years ago said, yeah, it's not written in stone, but it's a good construct or heuristic, as I said. So it turns out, and by the way, I have a book on my desk by Thomas Guillaumes. It's like Williams, but with a G-U instead of the W. Man, this guy's a PhD. He's really taken Walsh's work to a further level and talks about the hypothalamus and the pituitary, which are the little organs in your brain that regulate the adrenals. By the way, they also help regulate the thyroid. They help regulate the sex organs, the ovaries or testes, whatever. So it's the hypothalamus pituitary. Now, they could be sending out bad signals, or it could be something in the adrenals that are not receiving those signals properly. And there's what are called feedback loops, and all that can be chaotic as well. So now we have a new construct. Now we have the idea that it's not just the adrenals, it's the hypothalamus pituitary adrenal. It's called an axis, the axis of evil. You probably don't remember that, but the idea is that now there's a lot more involved. Well, it's a similar construct. It's a good idea now to look at all of these additional stressors that are affecting not only the adrenals, but the hypothalamus, the pituitary. And where does that lead us? That leads us beyond the maybe immediate environment to looking at other hormones, the circadian rhythm, toxicity, the immune system, and the limbic system, how you perceive the world and think. So it's kind of expanded. The paradigm is similar, but the heuristic has grown and the construct has grown to, if you have low cortisol, what we used to call adrenal fatigue, there's a whole lot else to look at. And that's just the complexity of the human body and the universe. It's the way things work.
So we've talked a little bit about this on other episodes, but especially when it comes to the adrenals, the HPA axis, why are symptoms so far removed from what's going on, or from that as close as possible to the actual root cause?
Right. Well, my thoughts on root cause. You may never know what it is. There's not enough tests. There's no one test, that's for sure. And so that doesn't really matter too much, because we can still have an effect upon that. We know that symptoms occur due to a disease process. Something's breaking down or malfunction, and it could be way upstream. So this HPA axis, you might say, is part of the endocrine system. It's certainly the adrenals and the gonads and the thyroid. These are endocrine, in other words, hormone-producing glands. And they are at cause of certain symptoms, but they are also subject to the the flow, the other metabolic processes in the body. So the endocrine system or dysfunctions in the endocrine system are the result of what I call metabolic chaos, just all the stuff in your environment. Mental, emotionally, spiritually, physically, and chemically and biochemically, of course. So again, a lot of these things we've mentioned already have an effect on you, on a person. And, we have our different entry points and places where this stress is having its first immediate effect, but that may not produce symptoms. It just kind of gets in you, if you will, and starts to cascade around the body. And eventually there are weak links in each person. And so you may end up with this endocrine dysfunction, and symptoms appear and seem highly related to that endocrine, that organ, let's say. Like, I'll give you an example, thyroid. It's very, very, I mentioned some cluster of symptoms around adrenal fatigue, and they are similar to those around thyroid, but thyroid are pretty easy to spot. We call it a traditionally reliable cluster of symptoms.
Mhm.
The tiredness, the fatigue, the extra weight you can't get rid of, the hair thinning, uh, the cold or even numb extremities, feeling sad, and you know, you just feel like crap, and you're not able to keep your metabolism up like normal. Constipation is a huge uh, item in that cluster of symptoms, or symptom in that cluster, and so that sounds like thyroid. And so you might even test the thyroid. This is the problem with people, even in functional medicine. It sounds like thyroid. Test the thyroid. God forbid it's low, because now you pat yourself in the back and say, I found your problem. Well, you may get some relief by treating the paper. In other words, we're going to use something, some agent to adjust the numbers, get that thyroid back up, or if it's TSH, get it back down, whatever you're measuring there. And as long as you don't have, some nutritional deficiency or autoimmune condition, there may be absolutely nothing wrong with your thyroid. In other words, the output that you're measuring and the symptoms that seem to be related to that are perfectly normal adaptive responses that the body has to all the other stressors, all the other functions in the body. It's just that it's funneling down into these symptoms. And even these test results, and even, the test results aren't the problem either. We know symptoms aren't the problem, it's the cause. And the lab results are also just a symptom, if you will. They're not really revealing a true healing opportunity there, because there's nothing wrong with the thyroid in many, many, many cases. And I'm sure it's more than half. My wild guess, just on experience, would be about 80%. Nothing wrong with thyroid. It's just doing what it does and responding to the stressors that it's under from wherever the hell they're coming from. So we tend to look as far upstream as we can. There's only so many labs available. And there's a lot in our program. We know we have about 70 different labs at our disposal, and you can run them all and still not find the exact root cause. But to us, that doesn't matter. Why? Because as health coaches, we don't diagnose and treat anything specifically anyway. And you get that.
Oh, yeah.
We use a holistic, vibrant lifestyle program that treats every cell, tissue, organ. Everything gets better. And that symptom or cluster of symptoms goes away by itself in many cases when you know what steps to take.
Absolutely. So FDN's model is very different from a lot of the typical medical models that you see out there. We aren't treating and diagnosing, but it's been established that FDN protocols work for healing opportunities. So talk a little bit about some of those FDN protocols that we are going to use if someone comes into us with these symptoms that are, I've got my adrenals. How are you going to approach that?
Well, you start with the other approach. Let's say, physicians want to do good in the world too. They save lives, and they certainly relieve a lot of suffering. Their approach, though, is we just call it their backyard. They will take on all comers based on, you have symptoms, you want relief, you go see a doctor. The doctor will apply agents regardless of what we would call the variables. So they treat, people the same pretty much. The studies on drugs, for instance, are on what's called a cohort, 50,000 people. But no one person is that 50,000 people. So they could have, there are way too many variables. So physicians don't concern themselves so much with the variables. However you show up, you have a set of symptoms. They're going to apply an agent, usually like a drug, that's going to have an effect and hopefully reduce or relieve a person of those symptoms. So variables don't matter to them, whereas variables are all we really care about. We do care about the variables, like how does that person live? What does their diet look like? What's their rest and circadian rhythm cycle look like? What's their exercise program look like? What is the factors? We talked a lot about stress and the various types of stress, and how to identify those things and remove or eliminate or reduce those things. And then, of course, we use supplements a lot, as that's our agents to support or stimulate or, substitute for what's missing in their food, things like that. So we care an awful lot about the variables, whereas physicians, people come to them and the variables just don't enter into the equation very much. And so that's fantastic. That means we should have a tremendous partnership ability with physicians. If someone comes to me and they've just smashed their finger with the hammer and is bleeding, go see a doctor. I'm not the guy for you. You don't call your nutritionist when your temperature's 105 and you're bleeding out of your eyeballs. Let's say you just got off a plane from Wuhan, China, and your temperature's 105. Don't call your nutritionist. No. Go get a physician who can get you out of the woods, who can save your life and bring those agents to bear. And by the way, they're really good at diagnosing certain things that will save your life. And it's different with us. The labs we run and the observations we make running those labs sometimes can't be capitalized on. If you need time, if you're going to help people by changing their diet and their sleep and their exercise, and you've sorted all the stressors and have them on the right supplements and things like that, that takes time. So if the downward spiral of their disease process is so contracted that the observations we make can't be capitalized on, that's the time to see a doctor. So that's how they work hand in. And they should just really work together. If we understand, whose backyard you're in and want to be in.
Yeah, and I do think they work together. And I talked a little bit about this at the conference, is that I've made some really good connections with the medical community where I live, and we've built those relationships, and they will refer people to me, and I refer people to them, because we each have our own backyard and we're working and doing different things, but they go very well together. So I definitely agree, Reed. They can be a great fit. For sure.
Yeah, fantastic.
So before we wrap up for today, do you have one final tip or anything that you want to leave these health coaches with?
Walk the talk. Start with getting up every day, being grateful, do some self-work of some kind. If it's read a book or meditate or walk around the block or, do something with your spouse. There's lots of possibilities to work on yourself first every day, even if it's not for very long. And then you'll be walking the talk, or at least starting the day off right. Mostly I find it to be a mental, emotional exercise. I do my physical exercise later. But, whatever works for you, as long as you're doing it.
Awesome. Well, thank you once again for coming and sharing your thoughts and wisdom with us every Tuesday. We will be back here, same time, same place next Tuesday. If you would like our deliverables this week, make sure to drop the word facts below, and we are going to send you the HPA Sex Hormone Access Guide and the HPA Sex Hormone Access video. That way you've got them, you can keep them, you can watch them over and over again and learn everything you need to know about HPA access. So make sure to drop the word facts. If you have questions after we have signed off, please make sure to drop those and we will get to those as well. But thank you everyone for joining us, and I hope you have a great week. Bye, Reed. Thank you.
Thank you.